If you enjoy what you're hearing and find it valuable, like, comment, and share. It's Ultra Life today. I'm Josh Bellew, hanging out with two people that I dearly love. We've got Keith Bishop, retired pharmacist, clinical nutritionist, health coach extraordinaire as it relates to brain health, as it relates to people on a journey with cancer. And then the founder of Ultra Botanica, Adam Payne, has graced us with his presence today and is throwing out some good science to all of us. So we're moving down this road of supplementation, just kind of reminding everything. And by the way, do you love what we're doing? If you do, it's easy to find us at this current time on YouTube, Ultra Life Today. Type it in, whether you do Ultra Life as one word or two words. You'll find us. We have a lot of archived sessions. We have some really cool interviews and got a lot of really cool ones coming up with some heavyweights like Keith Bishop here. Keith, it's always awesome to have you come. You're the guy that you're our clutch guy, because it's like it doesn't matter what subject we may need to plumb. You're pretty stout on a whole lot of subjects. So
I've been doing this a long time.
You have. So thanks for joining us. So we moved down the supplement rabbit trail there. You started off with something interesting, a protein as a actual food source nutrient. Talked about that. You talked about NAC. You really praised curcumin and berberine. You flowed right into nitric oxide, and we talked about the simple ways you can test that with some inexpensive test strips to make sure you're not too high, because you don't want to get too high, right?
Correct.
But you definitely don't want to be low.
No,
get in the sweet spot, right? What else have we got going in the supplement world? And Adam brought something up really interesting on the break. In our next segment, we're also going to talk a little bit about oral health and the relationship between bacteria in your mouth and brain health. It's a biggie, and nobody talks about it except a couple of people we know, right? Okay.
So there's oral health, inflammation, infections, and several things that are related to brain damage. Literally, so infections can go up there. So, but along the supplement line, I guess next would be, vitamin D and vitamin K2 may help some. As a matter of fact, statistically, it is a risk factor being low in D, and vitamin K2. But if a person takes it, I can't really say that we see that much improvement, because it's a long-term, many-year type thing. Being low in those nutrients increases the risk of the circulation problem, and getting nutrients up into the brain. So vitamin D, especially K2, helps pull that plaque out of the blood vessels, and then moves that calcium out of that plaque into the bones. So that's a very important part.
And this, I'm just learning a lot about vitamin D and its relationship to calcium transport. I mean, it's so important. I didn't understand it, but now that I do, how vitamin D is critical for the proper movement of calcium, not only out of their arteries, but also into muscle tissue.
Right.
Because calcium is responsible for that contraction, and then we need magnesium to release. So it's this biphasic relationship between calcium and magnesium, and they have to be in sync with one another. Vitamin D is critical for the calcium transport.
So my friend Kyle Drew has absolutely pounded it into me to the point that, and I'm really surprised it hasn't come up on your list yet, omega-3 fatty acids and their relationship to cognitive decline, brain health, all that. Kyle basically, and we sometimes will sit around and we'll talk, and what are your top 3 supplements that if you had nothing else and were stranded on a desert island? Generally, the first one out of Kyle's mouth is omega-3 fatty acids.
Well, and where I'm coming at on
DHA,
on that, DHA, EPA and DHA, most of the people that I know already are taking that. Okay, so that's why I didn't have it higher.
They're taking the omega-3s, or they're taking something else?
Or they're taking omega-3 fatty acid capsules.
And before we move a little bit into omega-3 and talk about that, am I right that basically almost every American gets way too much omega-6 in their diet, and they just are just in the basement related to omega-3?
So omega-3s are used by our body to make pain-relieving anti-inflammatory chemicals. Omega-6s typically found in animal fat are used by our body to make inflammatory, pain-causing chemicals. And so overall, most of us don't eat much fish. So the Mediterranean diet, for example, a true Mediterranean diet is actually fish is several times a week.
That's the staple then.
Yes, it is. It's a staple for them. And so, we don't do anything like that in the United States. And we don't have those sources. And I have to admit, and even able to get that, it's going to be a challenge.
I learned something shocking, and that is that the World Health Organization's statistics, and I know the WHO has a black eye right now, I think well-deserved. Anyway, I'll try to stay off that. But the World Health Organization actually has statistics that demonstrate they can look at populations that have access to seafood all across the world, and they can use those statistics to determine how much suicide, depression, anxiety, cognitive decline, and heart health will be among populations, just based on how close they are to seafood and how much of that they have in their diet.
And
I just thought that was so stunning.
Very interesting, but now part of that may be lifestyle.
Yeah, they do walk a lot in those areas. They do.
They're working harder. They're laboring
for sure.
typically.
Yep.
But there's a lot of lifestyle.
When you walk, you get sunshine.
Mm-hmm, exactly. There's a lot of other things that may be playing into that too. So in those blue zones.
Yeah, that's kind of narrow, I admit, but I still thought it was.
Yes, it is. It is, and it's important to consider that. So omega-3s, our brain is 60-70% fat, something like that. And so the fats that we put in our body will make a difference. The biggest problem is actually people are eating the wrong fats, and so they're eating too much of the fried foods that are, they're using the wrong type of fats that are oxidized because they've been heated for days. They've been frying those French fries, and whatever else, in those fats for days at the fast food restaurant or even a regular restaurant.
Yeah. So this is the short of the fried foods is avoid them.
Yes,
at all costs.
At all costs. Now,
I'm sorry about that. If we're bursting anybody's bubble here,
well,
about fried food. But literally, the fried foods are the worst culprit for brain health.
And can I say this though, Keith? You can do low frying with things like organic raw coconut oil and even really good Tunisian olive oil. I'm going to throw that in because there's some weird things going on with olive oil right now and it being adulterated and stuff like that. But you can do low frying with those, right?
Yes, and avocado oil.
And avocado oil.
Avocado oil.
High smoke
is at
temperature.
high smoke temperature. That means it survives that temperature. Yeah. And so stir frying, I'm okay with. At home, one-time use.
Boom, quick, 3 to 5 minutes.
Toss that oil.
Yeah.
Don't keep reusing that oil.
Right.
People ask me that all the time. Don't reuse that oil. So, yes, those fats are going to be important. I find that if we can improve circulation, though, that's where we're going to see the better results. So really, most of the things I'm talking about is kind of like some circulation type issues. There are the other herbal type things that have a tendency to act as almost like a spark for the brain. Ginkgo's one of those, bacopa, and huperazine. There's
so now you're getting into what some people call nootropics, some call nootropics.
Nootropics. We discussed that, how to pronounce that. So it depends on what kind of Okie accent you want to use. So
there you go.
I want them nootropics.
I want yes-tropics.
Nootropics. That's what I need.
So as a matter of fact, the best-selling item that we have is actually one of those items, and actually it's a ginkgo, with a couple other herbs in it that are, that kind of provides a spark, and people can feel the difference. The problem is it's not addressing the underlying problems.
Right. So again, it's kind of a jumpstart, quick fix.
Right.
But it's certainly not to take a substitution for exercise and changing the diet and all that.
Exactly.
So Keith, I got to ask. We make a brain supplement product, Endolift. What's your experience with that? Do you think it's helpful? And under which conditions would you recommend or not recommend EndoLift as a supplement?
Definitely along the lines of the anxiety and depressions and attention deficit type issues, and so the amino acids work out great for that. It goes back to the proteins,
Right.
and so there can be some issues with amino acid deficiencies, either not getting enough proteins, providing the amino acids, or not absorbing them, or not converting them in what our body needs. So the EndoLift is one of those ways to do that. So now I do some assessments to try to figure those type things out. So
Sure.
I do assessments, and with a urine test, we can actually measure the brain chemicals. Okay, so what are their stimulants? Is there cortisol high, which is a whole nother area. It's a stimulant, damage to the brain if it's too high, too much. For example, my wife has an issue with one amino acid that she's low in. That's important for the brain. I supplement that amino acid, and I can tell the difference.
So the diagnostic
with her.
The diagnostic you use is a urine test to be able to determine an amino acid profile?
Mm-hmm, yes.
Okay, awesome.
Is that the organic acid test? Or
that's one of them, and there's a ZRT is another lab. They do some neurotransmitters, and so you're looking if a neurotransmitter is high or low, why? And so you have to go back and look at that absorption or source of foods and things like that.
So just a quick segue, EndoLift is a product that we make at Ultra Botanica. It's actually the invention of a guy named Charles Gant, who is a MD, PhD, ND guy in...
Well-published, brilliant guy.
End Your Addiction Now, Your Godly Brain. He was an addiction researcher and scientist. So he built EndoLift because it is the building blocks for the enkephalin system, which is the fancy word for the endorphin system in the brain. And it's those 6 amino acids that directly contribute to very specific classes of neurotransmitters that we need for anxiety and for stability. He called it the neurotransmitters not in the central highways of the brain, but all of the sideways and alleyways that help the brain to integrate information. A lot of time we just focus on, do you have enough dopamine to be able to run and move and do those things? We're talking about all of the other neurotransmitters that help us to integrate thoughts and processes. That
Adam, one of the applications that Dr. Gant actually utilized that amino acid preparation that ultimately became EndoLift, it should be glaringly obvious to most of us that understand endorphins. People go to the gym, they're working through an injury, they've got pain, and they walk in the gym. They start pumping a little iron, and 10 or 15 minutes later, the endorphin system of the body releases natural opiate-type substances that help them manage their pain and even help to speed the healing process.
The runner's high in a cup kind
absolutely,
of deal.
And that's one of the things about that people don't even think about when it comes to EndoLift is he utilized it as part of a pain management thing in helping individuals get off opiates because it had dual function.
He used it primarily to help people recover. He called people that are going into withdrawal a neurotransmitter crisis. So essentially, you're taking the chemical away from the addict, and the addict, for opiates, they've replaced all of the endorphins in the brain. And so the brain literally stops making endorphins because you're giving it opiates. And then you take away the opiates, guess what? The stores of endorphins are gone. And so what does the brain do? It will do whatever it needs in order to get that neurotransmitter back. Brains do not function well without neurotransmitters. They go into crisis.
Yeah, okay. Keith, big revelation to me related to homocysteine and the link for homocysteine to cognitive decline. And another statistic I heard, and I think it's a very reputable source, but that...
Before we go into that, I just want to finish the thought because it's really important for people because we haven't connected the dots. The reason why Charlie Gant made the formulation was because he said, look, the solution for people in withdrawal is not just put them in a box and wait for them to recover and regain themselves. The solution is provide for them the building blocks that they need in order to make those neurotransmitters again.
And rapidly build that endorphins.
In fact, they would IV these amino acids, and they were getting success rates that other interventional systems were not getting. We're getting the same kind of results with an oral formulation.
Yeah, well, and that's a great segue, Adam.
I just want to make sure people connect to the box.
It's great that you brought that up because it is still such a huge problem.
It is a huge problem.
So I'm so glad you did.
But it's also appropriate for people might be dealing with neurotransmitter deficits, and they don't know that that's what's going on, but they feel anxious, tired, upset, irritable, grouchy, and really what's going on is their brains don't have what it needs in order to function.
Yeah, to build those nutrients or chemicals that are necessary.
That's right.
For that. I was really, I've heard of homocysteine was kind of a big word.
Oh, I love homocysteine.
10, 20 years ago, and then it kind of faded to me into obscurity because there was a lot of health food store supplements talking about lower your homocysteine if it's high. But homocysteine covers so many bases. If it's high, it can affect so many systems in the body. But I didn't realize it was preeminently spoken of as it relates to cognitive decline. And there's this unique relationship between methylation, B vitamins, homocysteine levels. Take us down that road for a minute, because I kind of look at it the B vitamins and determining if you methylate properly, so you're taking the appropriate type of B vitamins. I look at that as a massive, there's, and also the B vitamins only do so much by themselves, Keith. The omega-3s only do so much by themselves. But if you put the two together, you see big studies out there showing 73% drop in brain shrinkage with the same studies done for B vitamins only showing X. Same studies done for omega-3 only showing X. You put them together and it's like magic in a bottle to have that. Tell us about that.
Sure. So homocysteine is a chemical. It's a natural chemical our body makes. And if it's elevated, it actually can damage the blood vessels. And it can scratch and scar the blood vessels.
Contribute significantly to cardiovascular disease.
Exactly. It goes back to the circulation issue, circulation to the brain. So that's going to be one of those issues. But if it's elevated because you don't have the right type of B vitamins to lower that chemical. I'm not saying wipe it out, but to lower that chemical. Matter of fact, not enough is an issue too, but to lower that. And so it has to do with methylation. Many of you have seen things about methylated B vitamins.
Yep.
There is a test, MTHFR acronym, that tests for how well the body is able to convert folic acid, which is actually synthetic, but folates into 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. That's what our body really needs. Genetically, me included, we have a difficult time doing that. So therefore, I have to take a methylated B vitamin.
Yeah, and I want to mention to our viewers, years ago, methylated B vitamins, you'd look at them on the shelf and it's like, that is so expensive.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not that way anymore. And Adam, you actually have your own personal story, which I have told to so many people. And it was Dr. Gant that helped you discover this really major problem for you.
I went to the Mayo Clinic in 2010 because I was experiencing significant neuropathic issues. And they diagnosed me with idiopathic peripheral neuropathy, which means I have deterioration in my nerves, and they don't know why it was happening. Later, I got diagnosed with something called Charcot-Marie-Tooth syndrome. And then further on, in my working with Charlie Gant while he was still with us, we actually took my genome from Ancestry.com, plugged it into a medical database, and it turns out that I have all of the recessive genes around B vitamins. I also have all of the MTHFR recessive genes around methylation. And so Dr. Gant's comment to me was, I don't know how you're alive right now, because I don't process the vitamins to create energetics in my body.
Yep.
It's like the most difficult pathway you could imagine to get from here to Boston. And I don't fly, I swim through the canals, right? The worst path possible. So when I finally learned about these issues, I was able to start supplementing with methylated B vitamins because I don't methylate and I don't process B vitamins properly, and it changed my life dramatically. I've stopped the degeneration in my muscles and in my nerves, and I've been able to keep things at least at homeostasis.
Phenomenal. Yeah, Google methylation, and you're going to be shocked to find out that billions of processes take place every 2 or 3 seconds in your body that are totally tied to methylation.
A lot of our listeners maybe are scared about doing this genetic kind of testing, but honestly, I wouldn't have known about my issues unless I had done the genetic testing and learned about and had somebody qualified to help me understand what those numbers meant.
And those tests are so inexpensive now.
Yeah.
And so, $300, and you've got a lot of information. And that's on the high side.
Before. It was so informative.
Now, as a personal note, I would say avoid 23andMe, because recently, for over $10 billion, they sold their entire database off because of some neat little things in terms of service.
But it's not personalized, right? Even though people are pissed off about that, who that person is not told.
Well, it wasn't that way in 23andMe, but in many of the newer ones, that's my understanding.
Okay.
So look that up, check it out.
They have the name, but it's not. You can't get down to the person, which is HIPAA protected information.
Yeah, and so, but great information, and so without that, we don't know for sure what we're going to need. Along like the methylation issues, the B vitamins and things like that. A homocysteine blood test is easy and inexpensive. It may not be covered by insurance.
And it's informative, but it's better to do that and do the genetic testing, because that can help you to make supplement decisions for people.
Let's round out what I kind of call the trifecta as it relates to brain health of the core things: omega-3, B vitamins. Now you've got antioxidants that need to come into play there. Now, you've mentioned NAC already, which is a powerful one.
Right.
Detoxing as well as helping to elevate certain things.
Before you go into antioxidants, really we need to understand the body's ability to do phase 1 detoxification versus phase 2. Isn't that correct? Antioxidants are great. They're not. They won't be bad, but how much and what kind of antioxidants? Whether you need to do broccoli seed extract to stimulate, for example, phase 2, you only will know that if you do the testing to find out that individual's balance between the two. So, Keith, what do you work on from that perspective?
Yeah, so the genetic test will give an idea about that, and about phase 1, the body's converting toxins from fat soluble to an intermediate, and so antioxidants help with that intermediate conversion to that intermediate chemical. That intermediate chemical could be more damaging and toxic than the original one.
If your phase 2 detoxification is impaired.
It doesn't work. That's right. Thank you. If that's impaired, the phase 2 is a conversion of that intermediate chemical into water soluble to eliminate that out.
How much does a test like that cost to determine that? Or can you, as you said, glean a lot of that information just from the genetic test?
The genetic test is the number one thing.
Beautiful.
And now, but the other item that I follow for that is going to be weight loss. And so doing a body composition test and looking at water, muscle, bone, and fat, if we see a person losing fat, but their water retention gets worse, that means they're not detoxing. Okay.
That's a great point.
So important.
Yeah. And so if their water numbers keep going up, and that's just one of those signs of poor detoxification. They're not going that phase 2 step, which often requires, and that's another genetic issue. Some people have to have more help for that.
Well, I think you've kind of set the stage for us finally moving into what might be an optimum diet. And I'm going to be preaching ketogenic myself. I didn't really realize the role that ketones played in being able to literally feed the brain. Talk about ketones and a ketogenic diet.
One of my
For brain
favorite things,
health.
exactly, brain health, cancer, my two specialties. It's the same. As a matter of fact, this discussion is exactly the same for both issues. And so the body can function, the body and the brain can function off of sugars or glucose or ketones. But ketones are a little bit different.
Or also glutamate, right?
And glutamine.
Glutamine. Sorry.
And glutamine, yes, glutamine is another chemical. So it's not just sugar and ketones, but actually the sugar and ketones are easy to measure. And so I use a Keto Mojo finger stick machine.
Ooh,
and
sounds fun.
With a drop of blood,
Adam loves to just
Keto Mojo.
go around,
That
get
sounds
people to
just fun.
volunteer to get blood.
Get the drop of blood and measure your blood sugar, glucose, and your ketones. Find out what the fasting and how your body responds to the meal, and your supplements. And so the brain can function off of glucose and or ketones. And so in a fasting,
I've heard it's actually more efficient with ketones at some level. Is that true?
There's maybe, yes. It might be different.
And the guy that I listened to that really got me excited about brain health, he actually said that was true. Interestingly enough, Adam, one reason why I think you're so dang smart is
Oh my God.
seal oil and eating seal meat. But guess what's actually better for the brain than that? Caviar, you 11-year Russian guy over there eating caviar.
We would buy caviar by the quarter kilo.
Isn't that incredible?
And eat it for lunch.
Okay,
breakfast,
so back to ketones, and
Ketones,
what Adam, I think
interesting.
you're right. The guy I listened to said, ketones were the top shelf.
Yeah, but that only works if your body is forced to use ketones.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. You have to force.
Exactly.
We have to force our body to do it in our society,
Right.
Because we eat too much food.
Yep.
And so if we're getting too many carbohydrates, we're not going to be converting that. So our glucose is high. Our body wants to favor that because it's a quick energy, quick response energy. Ketones are a little bit slower, and brain function changes. So when I go into ketosis, my brain is different. And
Really?
I'm not saying bad, but I can definitely
You can tell.
I can tell that it's a little bit different. Actually, it's a little bit more calmer state, and I can definitely tell the difference when I go into ketosis. So it takes me almost 16 hours of fasting to get into ketosis.
That's fascinating.
Without supplements. There are cheats for that, but with that, but ketones are so important for the heart, the brain, cancer, metabolism, everything.
We haven't touched on oral health though yet.
And we'll move into that in the next segment. We'll definitely cover that.
I think we need to wrap that up with this.
So I found out something interesting. I was seeing a Dr. Nels out of Germany, and I've already mentioned this to Adam. I don't think he's actually run down the rabbit hole yet with it, but a trace mineral called lithium that we know they've synthesized into a drug that has been used for a lot of people with depressive orders and things like that, right? But there is the trace mineral form. Interestingly enough, World Health Organization, again, I'm quoting them, says that every single animal on the planet needs lithium as a trace mineral. But they neglect to say that human beings do too. It's actually an essential thing we need. This doctor has experimented with microdosing lithium orotate and only 1 milligram a day, Keith, and he's helping individuals that are dealing with brain fog from COVID, whether it may be a vaccine injury or just having COVID a few times, didn't have the vaccine, but have the brain fog. And he's really pioneering lithium orotate as something that is a very powerful tool for cognitive health. Have you heard anything about it yet? I just wondered because this is recent info for me.
Yes, I've read about it, and so it's something that has been around for a long time.
Yep.
And as a supplement.
Yep.
Not counting the prescription.
Exactly.
Megadose prescription for major
depressive or
schizophrenic, bipolar, type issues. But going with this lower dose definitely may help out. But it's a micro mineral. It's a micronutrient. It's a trace mineral. So just a tiny bit is kind of like even zinc is critical.
Well, we need to get into that because what you guys are touching on is the cell's need for those electrolyte balances. If it doesn't have those trace minerals, essentially the batteries of our cells are going to be suffering and not able to energetically to work.
Yeah, so it's the brain, the neuro system, brain cells and nerves are not just a electrical system. It's not just a neurotransmitter system. It's a combination.
It's all those things.
It's electrical. We have electricity in our body. We're making electricity, and we impact each other with electricity even. We don't even know it. But we also have these neurotransmitters that are also being released. So it's a combination of things along with the fats. So it's several different things. It's not always just one pill.
Yeah. DHA, by the way, Adam, converts photons into electrons in the body. It's a conversation for another day. This is Ultra Life Today. Adam Payne is sitting on the end, CEO of Ultra Botanica. We've got Keith Bishop here, a brain health expert and an incredible coach, both in brain health and in individuals with active cancer. I'm Josh Bellew. If you want to get a hold of Keith, it's real easy. 2 websites, flourishrx.com, FLOURISHRX.com, or Prevail Over Cancer, Ultra Life Today.